Salam world, I'm your shorter than average girl from down under, and today we're going to go into our second deep dive into some of the complex theological and philosophical debates in the Islamic world.
My body's on the line now. I can't fight this time now.
So the trope of the forbidden fruit, or the original sin, originates from the biblical account of the Adam and Eve story. This idea of an alluring, forbidden power and the consequences of falling prey to its appeal. It's considered a big deal in Christianity, as a human inherits the sin of Adam and Eve, so needs to be cleansed from it through baptism. On the other hand, Judaism rejects this notion, believing that everyone is born pure. And as for the final Abrahamic religion, Islam, it also rejects this concept of an inherited original sin. But the fate of Adam and Eve, whether the fruit was actually forbidden, and whether eating it was a sin, will yield different results depending on who you ask. This week, we'll try to summarize the various Muslim opinions on the truth of the Adam and Eve story, and overall what it means to us. Again, I've compiled opinions from different schools of thought and have done my best to exclude my personal opinion from the matter and offer an objective look on the overall debate. But before we jump into that, let's summarize the Adam creation story mentioned in Genesis. The creation of man occurred on the sixth day, the same day that God created land animals. And man was created in the image of God. After making him from the dust of the ground, he blew into his nostrils, and so man came to life. He made man male and female, so that they may multiply, full, and subdue the earth. Now, the Garden of Eden mentioned in the Bible is actually located on Earth, described to be located in modern-day Iraq. God then took man and placed him in Eden so that he could look after it, letting him do whatever he likes, with the exception of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad. If he does, he will die. Fearing that man may struggle, God gives man companions in the form of land animals and birds. But for man, which is now called Adam at this point of the account, these animals weren't the helpers he needed. So God places Adam under a deep sleep and takes his rib, making it into a woman. So when Adam wakes up, he finds her next to him, and they live happily together. This is when the snake comes and visits the woman, and he asks her if she can eat from every tree. When she says no, the snake tells her that she won't actually die if she eats the forbidden fruit, but she would become like God, open-minded to be able to know the difference between good and bad. And so she eats from the tree and gives Adam a fruit too. And indeed, their eyes were open, and they quickly realized their nakedness and covered themselves up with fig leaves. This is when, wal-'iyadhu billah, God walks into the garden and doesn't find them. So he calls out to them, and this is when Adam replies that they hid when they heard him approaching because they were naked. God asks them how they knew that they were naked and whether they ate from the tree. And so even more, wal-'iyadhu billah, Adam blames the woman. When God asks her why she ate, she tells him that the snake had deceived her. So God puts the first punishment on the snake, essentially cursing it to be how snakes are today, slithering on the ground. And then he punishes Adam and Eve for their disobedience, making it difficult for them basically to survive and having to work to find their food and get their basic needs done. The woman gets an additional punishment, which is to have to go through the pain of bearing children, and that she is in Adam's full control. This is when they're both cast out of Eden, and that is kind of the end of the story. Adam names the woman Eve later on because she is the mother of all of humanity. The story of Adam and Hawa, on the other hand, is kind of similar, but there are differences in the details. The Quran itself doesn't present the story of Adam in one location in one go. Instead, different details of the story are brought to light in different chapters, where those details are used to enrich what God is teaching us with the story as an example. A lot of the stories in the Quran are presented in this manner, because the Quran isn't a historical account, but a book of lessons. Further, the story of Adam in the Quran starts way before the biblical one. In fact, it starts before Adam himself.
وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون.
This gives us a hint of not only the purpose of Adam alayhi salam, but our creation as well. And I say hint for now because the basic version of the story doesn't go further as to what that may be. It just takes the direct meaning of the word Khalifa as a representative or advisor. But don't worry, we're going to get back to this soon, so I won't dwell too much on it here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then creates Adam, peace be upon him, from clay, with the narration from Timridi adding that this clay was from all of the earth, to represent the myriad of shapes and colors that the children of Adam were going to be. A narration from Ja'far ibn Muhammad suggests that clay is our nature, that humans are created from the matters of this world and the matters of the world to come, suggesting that clay is not literal clay, the one that we dig up from the earth, but represents that our body is made of the physical matter that this world is made from. And it acts like clay in the sense that the role of bones in the human body is the same as the role of trees on the surface of the earth. The hairs on the skin play the same role as the grass on the earth. The nerves of the human body play the role of the bark on trees. The blood of the human body plays the role of water on the earth. The earth cannot endure without water. In like fashion, the human body cannot endure without the blood. At the end of it, neither are contradictory and suggest that the human body is physically made of matter, which is unobjectable. After creating the vessel, God places the soul in the body, and so Adam came to be. Two events occur after this, teaching Adam alayhi salam the names and the prostration. The first of these is teaching the names. God has given us a unique combination of attributes that no other creature has to the same capacity. Inshallah, we will be getting into this in our deeper discussion, but as a consequence of this, we, and more specifically the first of us, Adam alayhi salam, was taught the names, all of them. Now, the Quran doesn't actually specify what these names are, but there are numerous different and mostly unopposing views on this. Number one is that he learnt the proper name for everything. Number two, the name of the angels. 3, his progeny. 4, the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Asma as they're referred to in Arabic. At the end of the day, all agree that whatever these names were, they were and are important to Adam and humans, and that they were exclusively at this point known by only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Adam alayhi salam. This is the reason why the angels prostrated to him. So after God blew a spirit into Adam alayhi salam, he asks those present, which we know to be the angels and Iblis, to prostrate to Adam. All the angels did so, but Iblis did not. Now, Iblis wasn't an angel. He was a jinn with the highest status of his kind, a status which allowed him to be with angels. And Iblis he didn't prostrate. When asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala why he didn't so, he replies that he is better than Adam alayhi salam because he is made of fire while Adam is made of clay. Now, this is the basic level of the story, so I'm not going to talk too much about what this means yet, but just know that Iblis refuses to follow God's command due to his self-proclaimed superiority or arrogance, which led him to be cast out. Now, for those of you familiar with Christian mythology, you'll realize that there are similarities between the story of Iblis and Lucifer. Both of them defied God and as a consequence were cast out. Also, like Lucifer, Iblis made a vow to God that from the moment where he has been cast, all the way to the day of judgment, he would entice humanity to do what he did. Now, I know this kind of sounds obscure at the moment, but we'll be revisiting this point. Some of you may have noted that there is an issue with the order of things. How can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach Adam the names before he had a spirit? Or did he teach him the names after giving him the spirit, but before commanding the angels and Iblis to prostrate? Now, the answer to this is that we need to remember time is relative to this material world. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses and then in a verse, it refers to stages, not chronological time. Stage 1 was the creation of Adam, and stage 2 is the acknowledgement of Adam as God's Khalifa. Both the teaching of names and blowing into him a spirit was part of stage 1, his creation. So it's not contradictory. After this, God tells Adam and Eve to settle in heaven with complete freedom to do as they like. However, he warns them of a tree. If they eat the fruit of this tree, they may be among the wrongdoers. But before we get to the tree, some of you may be wondering, where did Eve spring up from? Now, the Quran never mentions the conception of Eve as an event. All we know is that He Almighty created humans from a single soul and made from it its partner so that they may find security in one another, which takes the meaning of soulmates to a whole new level. But essentially, it suggests that at least Adam and Eve's souls were created and existed at the same time. When it comes to their bodies, however, there are some differing opinions on this. The Quran suggests that both Adam and Eve were created before they lived in heaven, and so all Muslims agree with this. But there is a hadith from Abu Huraira which suggests that, like the biblical story, she was made of Adam's left rib. Opinions differ on how to reconcile this. The first is they take most of the biblical story. After the prostration event, Adam a.s. was eager to share his knowledge with the angels, but they were too busy worshipping, so he felt lonely and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Hawa for him, so that they may be able to settle in heaven together. In this version, the word settle is taken metaphorically, referring more to Adam's state of ease and security after being given Eve, than literally Adam and Eve going to a place. Then there are scholars that reject this, and scholars that reject the literal interpretation of the hadith, citing the verse
خلق الإنسان من عجل
to say that this refers to the nature of man rather than the actual substance. Instead, Eve, like Adam, was created from the material of this world, and the rib is a metaphor for how man should value his wife. She is unique in form, made to protect your vitals. Consequently, you have no right to reshape her, as you will end up breaking her and the bond between you, which, if is left unattended, will remain crooked forever. Therefore, a person should protect the uniqueness of their significant other, just as they protect their bones in their body. Their significant other is solid and strong, but they're not immune to breaking. Now we can return to the tree. Unlike the Bible, the nature of the tree isn't specified, but like the Bible, neither is the fruit. The whole idea of the apple actually comes from Greek mythology and the story of the Iliad. So yeah, But anyways, in the Quran, the only thing ever specified is the possible consequence of eating the fruit, being a wrongdoer. The devil comes to Adam and Eve and persuades them to give the fruit a try. And when they did so, they became aware of their nakedness. And so they cover up the things that they are embarrassed of using leaves. Now, given Iblis had previously sworn to entice humanity with what he had done, some believe that it was Iblis who had come to them and persuaded them, although the Quran itself never actually mentions this. It only says that Shaitan, a devil, had come to them. Now, the differing opinions on the identity of this persuader, this devil, comes from two major points. What is a devil? And why was Iblis cast out? These are going to be the crux of next week's discussion, a discussion on Islam's view on the devil. So if that is something that interests you, make sure to stay tuned for the next video. But given that we don't have this context yet, all I'm going to say is what the Quran does. The devil lured them to eat the fruit, and they did. You may notice a huge difference here, which in Islam, we don't believe that Eve was persuaded first and then Adam. The Quran always mentions the pair of them together. This leads them to be sent away from paradise. And God informs Adam and Eve that the devil is the enemy of humanity in this world. After this happens, Adam and Eve both ask for ghufran. Now, I'm specifically not using the English term here because I want to talk about the term more specifically. It's a lot more nuanced than just the translation. Narrations mention that Adam and Eve found themselves in different locations on the earth and actually had to travel to find each other. Where they finally met? The Mount of Arafat just outside the plains of Mecca. There isn't consensus as to where in the world each of them found themselves, but it doesn't really change much to the story. For those who watched the Islam and Evolution video, the fourth group mentioned in that video, known as evolutionists, tie these hadiths to show that Adam and Eve were born to different Homo sapien tribes. And when their human soul was awoken, they went on this journey to go find each other. I just thought I'd mention that for those who are interested. But yeah, that's kind of the bare bones of the Islamic version of the Adam creation story. But it doesn't answer the questions. Did Adam and Hawa commit a sin by eating the fruit? Did they disobey God? And what's with this word ghufran, which I refuse to translate? Well, the answer of those questions lie in the etymology of the Arabic language and the grammar of the verses that they're in.
I can feel the light shine on my face.
For Adam and Hawa to have committed a sin, they need to have broken God's command. And for those who aren't versed in the Arabic language, this verse appears to be a command from God. But is it one? In the Arabic language, orders are given via order verbs. These are present tense verbs with an at the front of them, or if the base verb has a vowel in the center, it's literally just that term without that vowel in it. And we can see example of these order verbs throughout the Quran, like
وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين.
Now, the verse of the fruit doesn't actually have an order verb in it. Instead, it has a no and a present tense verb. But some of you are probably wondering, can't you have orders to avoid things? Like, don't do blah blah blah. Yes, you can. There are two types of no in the Arabic language. Allah al-Mafia and Allah al-Mahia. Allah al-Mafia is the one used to show that something doesn't exist, like the child isn't studying or they aren't eating the food. Whereas Allah al-Mahia, which is also known as La al-Jazima grammatically, is used to reflect an indicative command, which in Arabic is known as Amr irshadi or ishfaqi. So an example of this would be, do not touch the fire. Do not eat from this tree. And so we can see that our verse does fit in this domination. But isn't this still a command from God? Well, no. Indicative commands have the structure of don't do something because it will cause something. So they are a warning. And sometimes the because part can be omitted because it's implied to exist due to the grammatical structure. To make it clearer, I'll give an example. A mother sees a child getting close to a candle, so she says, "Don't touch the flame." This isn't an order, but a warning to the child, because the implied consequence, which has been omitted, is don't touch the flame because you'll get burnt. If the child then does go ahead and touch the flame, they hadn't done something wrong, or they don't deserve punishment. Instead, they're just going to suffer the consequence and get burnt. The same applies with Adam and Hawa alayhi salam. And the thing is, the Quran makes it easier for us because it doesn't even omit the consequence. And that is why as soon as they eat from the tree, the negative things start to become apparent to them. They recognize their flaws and nakedness and find themselves outside of heaven. This is all a consequence of eating the fruit, not a punishment. And the proof that they didn't sin is actually in the dua or the supplication of Adam and Hawa after this event. They ask for ghufran, not afu. Now, unfortunately, in modern day Arabic, we have come to use these terms almost interchangeably, claiming both of them to be forgiveness, and that's why both of them are translated as forgiveness. But the original definitions of these words are quite different. Afu means the bystepping of a mistake, or actively removing its consequences, which is what we generally associate with forgiveness. Whereas ghufran means to protect or shield from a mistake. The reason why we ask for both from God is because we want God not only to remove our sin, but to shield us from ever doing it again. The fact that Adam and Hawa, peace be upon them, only asked for protection, not removal, hints that there was no mistake committed to remove to start off with. As a consequence of them eating the fruit and seeing their flaws and nakedness, they recognized the potential of sin, and so they asked God for protection from it. Not to mention that now that they know who their enemy is, they want protection from them as well. And yes, we all inherited flaws and nakedness, but our flaws and flesh aren't a sin. They are simply another tool which can be used for good and bad, and that's what we need to be conscious of. Thus, Muslims don't believe that there is a need for baptism, only the need for protection. Protection which comes about through education and the strong will to apply the teachings. And now we're going to take a look at the fruit. What is it? And why was it so tempting for Adam and Hawa?
If I cross the line.
The analysis that we're going to delve into now is primarily derived from Islamic purpose theory. Essentially, these scholars say that there is another verse that we need to include in the discussion when talking about the creation of Adam.
إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا.
Whatever this trust is, the consequences of obtaining it are ignorance and tyranny, which these scholars argue are similar to the traits that the angels were concerned about when God told them that he was creating a representative of himself on earth. By linking these two verses together, one logically concludes that this trust that humans volunteered to take made us representatives, aka our status and our test were both made by choice. Now, why would anyone willingly choose to be tested, to take on a responsibility which may cause ignorance and tyranny through corruption and bloodshed? Well, only if the reward of success was worth it. Having knowledge of all the names, being the image of God on earth, and the creature of the highest status worthy of prostration. This theory suggests that God presented the trust, this opportunity, to all creatures, but only humanity was brave enough, or stupid enough from the eyes of other creatures, to have taken it on. And recall at this point, we were all one soul. Our individual souls haven't been distinguished yet, so we all made this choice as a collective conscience. And once we took it, we were able to understand the potential challenges associated with it, the challenges that all the other creatures feared. Yes, this theory implies that the forbidden fruit is part of this trust, or some argue is one and the same. And as far as my research in the matter has gone, there isn't a school of thought which rejects this theory outright. There are just schools of thought that believe that philosophy has no place in religion. And given that purpose theory is a branch of philosophy, they don't exactly oppose the concept, but the method used to reach it. And the reason why that there isn't direct opposition of the concept is because it isn't contradictory with the Quran and the direct purpose it gives humanity.
وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون.
To understand this, we first need to know what this trust is. There are many non-contradictory and applicable suggestions which have been made by scholars. Some suggest that it's the mind, perception, reasoning, knowledge, free will, the ability to create, or a combination of all of them. These, uncoincidentally, are also the traits that we believe God gave uniquely to Adam a.s. for the purpose of reflecting on his identity, seeing the truth, and finding the reason for his existence so that he can be God's representative, essentially a conduit to God's will and grace to all creatures living on earth. However, for us humans to be able to see the truth, we need comparisons, aka to understand light, we need to experience the lack of light, darkness. So, to see good, we need to see the lack of it. Having accepted the trust, Adam and Eve became privy to Shaitan's temptations, and so were the first to be able to experience this lack of good. Once they did, they asked for protection from it immediately, having understood how it could impact their purpose and their goal in a negative way, which actually matches how the Bible describes the forbidden tree in Eden, the tree of knowledge of what's good and bad. And till today, we still experience the same challenges that Adam and Hawa, peace be upon them, did. Temptation getting in the way of our purpose, and experience opening our eyes to understanding that we only knew before as theory. For all of you who are still wondering how all of this is worship as per the verse, let's understand what worship is. The Quran states that all creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala worship Him at all times. They don't need to use language to do so. Their worship is simply to fulfill their duty, the duty assigned to them by God, aka to fulfill their purpose. Given that they don't have free will, they are doing this all the time, so there is no challenge to it. Each has its place in the natural order and so fulfills their place in it. However, humans and jinn do have free will, meaning we have the capability not to fulfill our place in the natural order. For humans, this is being the representatives of God on earth, aka the doers of good, as God is all that is good. And so, our purpose is to willingly accept this and choose to do this. Essentially, to become Muslim, submit ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why this isn't contradictory, because our purpose to worship is our role to fulfill our place in the natural order, albeit done willingly. I know, big words, but I can't find another way to say it. But yeah, Essentially, Muslims don't believe that Adam and Hawa committed a sin. They were forewarned about the possible consequence of eating from the tree, where though their cognitive process was compromised by shaitan, which again is not to be mixed up with Iblis, they chose to eat from the tree and thus were able to now distinguish between good and bad. After their cognitive realization, both Adam and Hawa asked God's protection from both bad and shaitan, to which they were granted. Philosophical theologians connect the story of the fruit to our purpose, saying that it was indeed necessary for humans to eat from the tree so that we can complete our purpose and submit to God. For without knowing the difference between good and bad, and have the free will to choose between them, there would be no challenge or the ability to succeed in it. We need to know what good and bad are to be able to choose between them, with every choice moving us closer or further away from fulfilling our purpose. So that's the story of Adam and Eve in Islam for you. Now, Muslim mystics go into an even deeper rabbit hole when it comes to the story, but it's one that requires a lot of additional mystical concepts for us to understand. And for the purpose of this video, I don't think exploring that route will add too much to the discussion, especially the basic one that the arcane fans need to understand my arcane analysis later. So we're just going to leave it at this. Next week, we'll be looking at the devil, specifically what it is and how it differs from Iblis. We will also try to make sense of the purpose of the devil, its different types in this world, and how the story of Iblis connects to it all. So, if that is something that you are interested in, I'll hope to see you next week. Be brave, be happy, and be kind, and we'll catch you all next time.